Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Dr. Haider Shah. On behalf of Calwas, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we have another very interesting session. I'm really honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speaker who is going to talk about how to publish in high impact journals. Publication is something which is mostly referred as in art. If it is so, then how to do it? And if it is not in art, it is science, then what are the things which need to be considered and followed properly? And if it is both, then what things we should be doing and learning. So in this session, you will get to know how to evaluate the manuscript and its importance and the quality. So you will get the best insights, right information, guidance, knowledge about all these things because we have renowned professor and expert with us in today's this session. So stay tuned because in amazing stuff are coming ahead in this session. So before we start, I would like to thank Kalwas for arranging such enlightenment sessions for their support and providing us such a wonderful platform. The aim of Kalwas is to give you the opportunity to connect and interact with world-renowned speakers, academic leaders, teachers, authors, researchers, experts, professionals, and businessmen to learn and to share their views, experiences, and tips which will create an impact and will enable you to learn new things and to develop yourself in order to grow and transform individually as well as to contribute to the world at large, as our slogan is come, learn, and share knowledge. So today we have a special and distinguished guest speaker. He is a well-known personality in academia and industry, having a vast experience and exposure on multiple positions at multiple organizations. We always see him on different platforms, conferences, symposium, while contributing to the field and world. Through his vast publication and great knowledge and wisdom, people are getting the right guidance and knowledge. Above everything, he always extends helping hand and popular for sharing his knowledge. So let me introduce him formally. We would like to introduce him because his profile is so rich, so vast, but we will try to cover most of his things. So he holds a laureate degree in physics 1976 from the University of Milan, Italy, and a PhD tourism 2008 from the University of Queensland, Australia. In 2018, he has received the Italian National Habilitation to full professorship in applied economics for the period of 2018 to 2024. He is a professor at the Bocconi University, Milan, where he teaches courses in computer science, information technology, and systems and quantitative research methods. At Bocconi, he is a coordinator of the digital strategies area at the Master in Economics and Tourism and Research Fellow at the Dondina Center for Research on Social Dynamics and Public Policy. He is also a professor at the Division of Social Sciences and Humanities School of Core Engineering Education, Tomsk Polytechnic University, Russia. After having performed research and teaching activities in astrophysics and radio astronomy, he joined IBM Italy 1978, where he held several professional positions in the area of large systems with main activities in information system design, marketing and managerial education, and managerial position in the technical and marketing areas. In addition to that, he has also worked on managerial position in Germany, IBM Mainz plant as a marketing support manager in 1991. He is at the Marzirio Group, Linguistic and Transportation as director of the group's information system department of the headquarters organization and supply chain management department. In addition to that, he has been a visiting professor at so many business schools and colleges. In addition to that, he has carried out research and consulting activities in the field of information technology, organization, and planning for private and public tourism organization has, and moreover has managed several international research projects dealing with tourism, destination management, and territorial planning. Moreover, recently his research interests have centered on the analysis of the social and technological network structure underlying the tourism activities and the application of complexity theories and network analysis methods to the study of the tourism destination. He has had several lectures in national and international conferences, authored numerous scientific and popular articles and books. His scientific works are well cited in the literature as well. He is the member of the scientific board of several international conferences, scholarly journals, and serves as associate editor of the Journal of Information Technology and Tourism and the International Journal of Tourism Sciences, and as a editor of the letters, the section current issues in tourism. In addition to that, he has chaired the information technology and tourism cross section at the IFIP, and the further in addition to that, the industry track at Inter 2010 and 2011, the PhD workshop at Inter 2014, and moreover, he has been vice president of IFITT, the International Federation for IT and Travel and Tourism, in 2012 to 2013, and the president of the Italian chapter. Moreover, he is the founding member of the Society Internet, the Italian chapter of the Internet Society, and the member of the Italian Physical Society of IFITT, the past vice president and the president of the Italian chapter, and fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. In addition to that, in 2017, he has been awarded the Hennes Werthner Lifetime Achievement Award from the IFITT as well. Last but not the least, he's a wonderful speaker, author, teacher, professional, a multi-talented person with a dynamic personality, and above everything, a great human being. So please help me in welcoming our guest, Professor Dr. Rodolfo Baggio. Welcome to the Calvas platform, and thank you very much for joining us, Prof.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's too good. Yeah, I've been doing a number of things in my life, so quite a big experience. We old people, you know, I've had big experience.
Yeah.
So the topic today is publishing, which is a tricky thing. I had thought to prepare a presentation, but then I decided not to. Because when you do a presentation, it looks like you have a defined path, you know, a structured way of approaching things, which in this case is totally out of the of the league. Publishing, it's yeah, you will say, well, it's more an art than a science. I mean, there are no known paths, there are no recipes, there are no standard things to do. It's a matter of it's mainly a matter of experience. One thing I could say is that when if you think at publishing, and if you think at the pressure we have today to produce works on certain type of journal and so on, I think the best advice I could give is forget the publishing. Forget the publishing and do your homework well, because that's the basis. You know, I receive many requests by many. You know, let's say, I need to publish a paper in that journal, and my reply is typically forget. Before you start by doing well what you need to do, and then you decide whether this is worth something that is called a paper or a contribution at a conference or something like that. Because this is how things work, you know, and it's more a matter of experience than a matter of doing things. If you want to publish well in those high reputed journals, I think the best way to go is to gain experience in publishing in any type of journal you can, and so you see what the mechanisms are, and the mechanisms today are a bit tricky. We do have, as many of you know, we do have a standard formal approach to the publisher. You submit the paper, the editor decides whether this has some interest for the journal, and then you have this wonderful lottery of reviewers today, because your work needs to be assessed by some other experts. And this is something that is not that old, by the way. I don't know how many of you know that the formal path of having an editor deciding, reviewers allocated, and the comments and so on, is something that has been formalized in the 1960s, 1970s, before there was no such a thing. If you consider that Albert Einstein, that has published an incredible number of papers, has never gone through a review process. The only time that an editor sent it out for reviewers, he wrote a harsh letter saying, "How do you dare to have someone else commenting on what I do?" Something that today we obviously will not do for any reason. So the idea is to do something that is worth, and what typically an editor or reviewers, the good ones, by the way, look for is basically two things, and it depends on the area. It depends on the discipline. In tourism, what we typically think is two things. One is some kind of contribution to the field. Okay, the exercise of using standard tools to say standard things doesn't appeal anyone. And must have some kind of relevance and some kind of possibility to be used or to be understood and to be considered by many. So, for example, the 10,000 paper on what the COVID effects have been in your small village have no interest for anyone. I mean, they have interest for you, but not for the others. Unless you come out with something that's totally different from what the rest of the literature says. You can also do a standard work with the standard methods and so on, provided you probably, for example, get results that are in contrast with what is commonly said, and you can discuss why. But if you just do something that's mainstream and that is the usual, how consumers accept this type of technology or something like that, I mean, we have seen 10,000 of those, so we don't need one more. Okay, so the first thing is trying to think about in a creative way of what we can do and what type of topic we can analyze. The second thing is to build a good story on those things, because the simple exposition of what we have done, of the method we used, of what the results are, it's not appealing. I mean, you need to have some appeal. You need to build a good story out of what has been done, and you probably would like also to try to see what are the most there are periods in which some topics are more fashionable than others. Okay, and this typically will help a bit in understanding that. Unless it's becoming too popular, because, as I said, the 10,000 papers on COVID have been starting to be a bit boring on this type of thing. And then what to say? When writing is a difficult thing, and it requires a lot of work, because once you have done your work, and once you have produced your results, and what you think these results may be important, relevant, may contribute to something, whether you've been using a new type of techniques or different type of methods, or whether you are importing, as I've done, for example, several times, methods of analysis and techniques coming from different fields and trying to adapt to ours, then it comes the difficult part, that is putting together those 10 to 15, 20 pages of written things, And here there may be some general suggestions. One is, keep it short. I mean, you don't need to write an encyclopedia. You need to communicate to others what you have done and what the important is in typically a limited number of pages or limited number of words. So keep it very compact. better write less than explaining too much things and so on. Keep it simple because mainly if you're using sophisticated methods, you may be among the few who understand them well and know them well. I mean, the usual reviewer may be working in another area, maybe not very familiar with those different methods and so on. So try to explain very well what you've done and in simple terms, like you were explaining to your grandmother. I mean, that's something I typically say. But at the same time, be very focused on what are the objectives of your work. State them very clearly at the beginning, because this is what typically does impress the reviewers and the editor. Also, don't forget, because sometimes we tend to forget it, to signal very well what are the contributions and what is the novelty of what you're doing. Because sometimes we take it for granted, and we think that since we have done that for the first time, everyone knows that this is the first time. But today, with the incredible number of works that have been publishing all over the world, there are hundreds of thousands of papers. It's difficult that someone knows everything about a certain topic, So signal very well why you think this is a good contribution and good novel thing. And then there are a number of different suggestions for the different parts. I think probably one suggestion, if you want to start, is have a very good look at these important journals, because many of them, if not all, have one day or another published an editorial, a comment by the editors and so on what are the criteria and what are the ideas that lie behind the acceptance of a paper, and mainly what are the things not to do, because those are the most important. Okay. For what concerns the different areas, probably the methodological section is one of the most important, because there is where you explain what you have done and what you show, what can be your main contribution to the field. And when writing this one, as I said, be clear, be simple, be focused. Avoid any irrelevant information. I mean, if I read on a paper the usual discussion, and I read in the methodological part, for example, what is the meaning of a correlation coefficient? I mean, please forget those things. I mean, if we are in this field, we are supposed to know. And if we don't know, we can go out and check somewhere else. I mean, you don't need a description of a very simple standard method, because so we take for granted that at least a basic knowledge of many methods, mainly in the quantitative area. For qualitative processes that I'm less familiar with, because I'm a number crunching person, so I don't know much. But for qualitative, you may explain a bit better how you decided to use certain type of tools and so on. The other important thing is to signal why you chose that particular method or that particular series of techniques. Because you can analyze data in hundreds of different ways, and so there may be some peculiarities or some particular things that may be important for your type of analysis or for type of results. Take care of the significance of what you have done. Try always to answer the famous question, so what? I mean, you've analyzed a wonderful situation. You splendid methods, wonderful data, incredibly interesting results. Then, so what? What do I do with those? I mean, why is that important? And why is that relevant for me or for a number of people or for other situations like this and so on? Another thing is the good organization of the paper. And we do have a kind of standard organization, which is not, let's say, 100% mandatory. I mean, we typically see an introduction, a literature review, a methodological side, the results, and so on, but sometimes we can write a paper in a different way. The importance is that the organization is clear and that the reader understands what is reading and what are the things that the authors are trying to communicate. The writing style is important, and this mainly for us that are not English mother tongue is an important point. We could discuss for years whether and why English has become the standard language for communicating scientific results and so on. But anyway, it's English, so we need to be aware that those who are reading need to understand well the language. And the problem is that most of the those who read your paper are not English mother tongue. So there are cases in which they don't understand what you've written, because you're using fancy words or too sophisticated constructions of the language or too complicated ways of saying things and so on. So keep it very simple at an elementary level, which is always the best suggestion you can do. Obviously, in organizing things, writing, and so on, follow exactly what are the guidelines of the different journals. I know that there are hundreds of different instructions, hundreds of different ways of, hundreds of different rules that the journal say, but this is an important thing because it's one of the first issues that are checked by either the editorial people or the editors. If you don't follow what are the guidelines for the sections, for the writing, for the size, for the number of words, for the references, for the format. I mean, there are a number of these things. Unfortunately, they're all different. So if you want to send the paper to the different journals, you have to do that. But this is important. It's an important thing. What else? Be rigorous, because rigor is important. Also think that in theory, what you have done should be replicable. So give well all of the instructions for collecting the data, for how the data have been handled, for how they've been cleaned or managed, and so on, together with the method you've used. And the best way is, for example, also to make people aware of what tools you've used for analyzing the data, what type of software or programs you have used, and so on, because this helps people understanding. I mean, when I read the paper, I don't know what those conclusions come from. If I know what tools have been used, I can probably have a better idea of what has been done and how it's been done. And in theory, you should allow your reviewer to replicate your work to see whether there are issues or there are or everything is okay. Now, this is usually we don't do that, but in theory, that's one of the things that should be done. The other important point is on the data, because when you publish something, we tend to think that these are relevant, complete, and timely data. I mean, publishing today a paper with data of 5 years ago, unless you have done any special reanalysis of the data, unless you have done a special work and so on, doesn't appeal anyone. I mean, don't need to know now what the situation 5 years ago was. I want to know what today the thing is. And another tricky point is that the so-called background or literature review. Sometimes people tend to be too extensive or to be too short. I mean, you need to make a trade-off with what is the meaning and what is the situation. Typically, we suggest to use only what is directly related to what you're doing. I mean, we don't need to know the whole history of the field and so on. We know because you typically will be publishing a paper on a specialistic journal, so the readers of the journal know what the field is and so on. What you need to do is to analyze the literature for what concerns the work you've done, and for what concerns and this to explain why you did those things, whether you find some gap in the literature, whether you find some topics that were not addressed yet, or addressed in a way that you think was not correct, so you try to correct and something like that. So it's very important to be very very focused in the literature review, and to be complete, and possibly to make reference to some as much as you can to recent works. I mean, if you reference to something that's 20 years old, I mean, yeah, maybe there are some papers that haven't changed the domain for the last 20 years. I mean, those are the seminal papers and so on, but typically every one of us knows them. So we don't need to say, unless you are using some specific issue and some specific topic from there. What else? The other thing is, again, for the relevance and for the significance, a discussion of the implications your work can have. Because these are more such, I mean, this is a tricky point. I typically am not very, I don't agree very well on certain type of thing. One thing in the conference I commented that if you're asking me to give a good theoretical contribution and a good set of implications, you're asking me to do two things that are contrasting. Because if I give a theoretical contribution, I don't know yet maybe what the implication, what the applications can be. And if you ask me for application, I can use any well-known theoretical approach and so on. So sometimes there is a bit of, but anyway, mainly when you are proposing some new, some novel ways of handling certain topics, suggesting what the application of this thing could be is well welcome. Also because some may not be aware of what the situation can be. Some may be not very well, how to say, very well knowledgeable of this type of issues and so on. I've considered that today, with the number of papers we receive and the number of contributions we are called to analyze, finding people to review a paper is becoming more and more difficult. And people, I know this reviewing paper is one of the things, is a service to the community. On the other hand, as I say, I cannot spend my whole life reviewing papers instead of doing my work. So, I mean, there must be a trade-off on these things. Reviewing paper can be a good exercise to understand what the others do and how to publish things. Even if you are not an experienced reviewer, you can always comment on what you read. Okay. And reading a number of contributions can help you to understand what is the standard format, what are the flow of the arguments, what are the ways of presenting things, how stories have been built, and so on. So I would suggest mainly to um, young researchers to do a number of maybe with the help of some more experienced academic, but to do a number of reviews, because so you see what are the papers in the making, not what is the final cleaned and well organized contribution. Um, what else? Another important point is the graphics that you use for accompanying your work. Um, Make sure that your figures are well intelligible, are well clean, are well clear, and so on. Because sometimes you read the paper, you see a number, and then you see a figure that that's confuses things instead of clarifying. Figures are meant to be a clarifying point, not a confusing point. So take care and do and try to draw them with good tools, because when publishing, then the resolution of the picture, the colors, and so on, they can be thing that papers are typically printed in black and white, unless you want to pay for the figure color and so on. And you see colors only online. Now, it's true that many of us practically use only the online the online tools, but consider that some colors, when you print on a piece of paper, do not render well. So consider what is the choice of the colors for to be used in a picture, because they must go on a black and white piece of paper. So sometimes that can be confusing. Well, I don't think there is much more than this. I mean, there could be long discussions on all of these topics. So probably, if you have some questions, it may be better to answer them rather than.
Yes. Really, Prof, thank you very much. The way you explained everything right from the
Oh,
introduction.
by the way, sorry. This is my point of view. I mean, without that, this is my point of view and my coming from my personal experience, because others may tell you different things as usual. No.
Yeah, yes.
Always, because this is not science, not geometry. I mean, you don't demonstrate theorems. You have different interpretations of these things. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, Prof. But really, I liked it and I loved it the way you started it from the topic selection, and then you talked about the how to build the story and keep it simple, precise. You talked about the methodological contribution, that your methodology matters a lot. How did you carry out everything? Then you talked about the data, the conclusion, the significance, even the reviewer part. Why the reviewer reviewing is important thing. It is the service to the community, but how you build your own understanding. I love your analogy of giving of example of the Einstein and other important things, that we love the flow of the argument. By reviewing, we try to understand how people make their point, they build their argument, which is very interesting. And I believe through reviewing we learn a lot, Prof. This is
Yeah.
what we do. We are updated because of the reviewing different articles, that what is happening in the field and where the things are going forward.
One, one
Yes,
thing I wanted to add on the reviewers, because
please.
they're important. May give you good suggestions. They may give relevant comments and so on. They're not the Bible. Okay. So if you don't agree with the reviewer, you write back. If you are uh, let's say, lucky enough to have received a revision comment instead of a reject. I mean, if your paper has been rejected, most
Yeah.
of the time you see good comments on how to improve and how to rewrite your paper, because sometimes you find them. Obviously, you choose another journal for sending, because if you send to the same one, it will be rejected immediately. It's been rejected already. But
Yes, Prof.
when it comes to replying to reviewers, I think there are two things. One is, if you think that the comment of the reviewer is relevant, do what they're suggesting. If you think that the comment is not relevant, say so. Okay, you come and say, well, okay, yeah, this is your idea, but my work says a different thing. Okay, or this is out of the scope of my work or something like that, because sometimes the reviewer, or if you think that the reviewer are wrong, politely tell them they are wrong. Okay, because, and the editors look at these things. The editors look at the comments and the replies, and so they make up their mind. I mean, I have accepted sometimes papers with the reviewers suggesting to reject because I thought the reviewers were wrong, and the reply to them, these things happen, not very often, but happen. So if you think that a reviewer is correct, reply. If you think that the reviewer has given you a good suggestion or a good different point of view, you can accept it or discuss it and so on. If you think that the reviewer is wrong, tell them. Easy, and say, no, sorry, but I think this is not the case, or I think this is not the right way to apply that thing. Because, I mean, obviously you need to justify it, but don't take, as I said, the comments of the reviewers as always 100% correct and 100% to be followed. That's one of the things I've always done. Sometimes it doesn't pay, but at least, as I say, I have my own dignity, so I cannot use something I don't think is correct. I mean, that's my point of
Yeah.
view.
Yes, very nice, Prof. Really wonderful point of view, and very nicely you have mentioned that we can politely disagree with the reviewer, and we can tell them that it is beyond my scope, and even my objective of the study is different. Maybe my research question is different. We are doing different things, so that happens, and we have to do it respectfully, as you mentioned as well. Thank you. Prof, I really learned a lot of new things from you. The way you were explaining the things, it was just like a snapshot of my research journey till now. That you were highlighting the things which we learned with the passage of time, but through trial and error way, through learning from our senior
Yeah.
supervisor and so many people.
And then, for young people, work well with the more experienced researchers and more experienced
Yes,
academic, because you learn a lot by working together, not by doing things by
exactly.
yourself.
Right, very right,
You
and
know,
that's why we have the research
I
collaboration.
have, I typically say that I'm starting to have a strong allergy to see my name alone, on a piece of paper. So I always work with others. Also because we have different, today the most of the thing we do require different skills, different competencies, and so on. You cannot be a
Yes,
good data analyst and a good storyteller, for example. There are two different things. I'm not good at writing stories, so I
yes,
look for people who's able to write good
yes,
stories. I'm good at analyzing data. I'm good
yes,
at collecting data and so on. So and you put together a team of people that have different competencies that are able to work well together, because that's sometimes
yes,
it doesn't happen, but that's human nature is done this way. And
yes,
so you achieve good results in this way.
yes, bro. And very rightly mentioned you that we have different set of skills and set of competencies, and I think we should be utilizing it up to the full potential, because we have the different skill set, and I think that's the beauty of the collaboration, that we learn from each other,
Yeah,
and through this way, even the work quality become very good, and we can contribute in much better way.
yeah,
Yes, sir. Yeah. So now, Prof, let me start with the few questions,
yeah,
because a lot of questions are waiting for you. But since we have the time limitation, so let's start quickly with the first question, Prof. Prof, they want to ask the question that thank you very much for a wonderful explanation and guiding us on such a wonderful points. Dear Prof, since you have a vast experience and work across the disciplines, the question is that please guide us about the multidisciplinary research and research topic, particularly for me as a PhD student. Do you allow me, or would you allow me to work at multidisciplinary way to have a topic from multidisciplinary, particularly focusing on technological perspective in
Uh,
the process behavior. Yes, please.
I I do most of the things I've done are multidisciplinary. It's tough because they all call for multidisciplinarity, but they mainly don't understand what it is. So it's more difficult, but can be done.
Yes.
My standard paper typically goes through 3 or 4 different rejections, 3 or 4 different journals, and so on, because you need to find the right combination in order to do things. It's difficult, but is the way to go, in my opinion. It is what I do. Okay. I mean, the standard mainstream works, frankly. I'm getting a bit bored, even if I find them published in wonderful journals and so on. I mean, combining different methods, different approaches, and so on is a wonderful and enriching thing. Is a bit sometimes can be a bit more difficult because people
Yes.
need to understand. And if you are doing a real in multidisciplinary work, you're not just deepening in any specific field. So you find the economists that say this is not economic enough. You find the sociologists that say this is not sociological enough, and so on. But you need to explain well how you have put things together and so on, because otherwise people don't understand. And this is
Yeah.
when this is a bit tricky, but as I say, can be done. Some patience and keep trying
Yes, bro.
uh, is possible. I mean,
Yeah. And Prof, very nicely you have mentioned that yes, once you are doing multidisciplinary, so people may not understand it very well. And secondly, sometimes they say that it's not so in depth, so you conduct in depth analysis for that, and particularly econometrics related things. So it's a double edged sword. It can be positive, it can be
yeah,
negative
yeah.
impact.
It depends
Yes,
on what you want to do. Yeah, that's the
exactly.
typical.
Yes,
And by
bro.
the way,
Yes, bro.
you will have a higher rejection rate, but rejections are not bad things. I mean, rejections can be useful, can be very useful because you understand. Even
Yes,
if the
bro.
comments are not good, even if you don't see bigger, but you understand what is the direction that's mostly accepted and so on. So you may try to refocus a bit in order to, you know, publishing a work is always a trade-off game, you know,
Yes, bro.
between what you
Very.
think is fully correct and what the others are willing to accept. So you play a little.
Yes, bro. And this is why they say that we learn from our failures and we learn from our rejection because we get a wonderful suggestion and recommendation.
Yeah.
And I think we have
Sometimes
learned
yes,
a lot
sometimes
from it.
not, but
Yes, bro. Very right. Very right. Prof, now the second question they want to ask regarding the special issue. Prof, they want to ask that please tell us about the merits and demerits of publication, particularly under special issue. Do you recommend special issue publication for your students? Yes, please.
uh, well, I frankly never thought that way. I mean, if I'm working on some issues and I see a special issue, I may decide that probably that there is more focus on those topics and so on. But I wouldn't say, yeah, for me, it's not a big issue. I mean, I'm not looking for special issues unless I'm doing a specific work in a specific field that may be for a special issues may be more suitable, you know, because probably the having focusing on a single topic may help may help collecting papers and collecting papers and special topics and so on. But not really. I mean, unless I say you're doing something that's very specific and you find a special issue on that matter, that probably may be worth trying at least.
Yeah.
For special issues, then be careful in reading very well what the editors of the special issue want. I am very recent experience. It does not feel. I have opened a call on a special issue on the Journal of Information Technology and Tourism, and this is a special issue on metaverse. Now the call is closed. Obviously, the journal is Information Technology and Tourism. Okay. If I ask for a special contribution on a topic, I'm expecting to see technological contribution. If I receive only paper on what is, consumer behavior and acceptance and so on, then nothing to do with what I'm expecting. Okay. And so they will be rejected, not because they're not good and so on, but because the focus should have been on technology, not on those are psychology journals, are consumer behavior, are marketing or whatever. I want to focus on technology and I want contribution on that. So if you contribute to a special issue, yes, the list of possible topics is typically very vast. But if you read well the call for paper, you understand well what the editors are looking for. And if you are out of those, the risk of rejection is very high, but not because your work is not valid, but because you're not responding to a specific call. And this is what
Yes, Prof. Very right. Thank you very much for such a wonderful insight. And by looking at, yeah, yes, yes, Prof. Very right, very right. And I think looking at the guideline is very important, and the scope of the special issue is very important. And if it is out of the scope, so definitely it is going to be rejected. And very nice example you have given of your own. Now, Prof, there is one another question from the young researcher, and I think most of the young researchers they are quite puzzled because, as you mentioned as well, there are so multiple journals with the high impact journals, etc. They want to ask that, Prof, as an initial beginner researcher, what do you recommend for us after doing a PhD? Should we go for a quality publication for high impact journal, or should we focus on the new journals in order to get. Yes, please.
I think for the initial period, just trying to get published in any journal you want. Okay. Approaching directly the so-called high impact and so on can be frustrating because the rejection rate is very high,
Yes.
typically, and because they're very demanding. So it's a matter of psychology. If you write 5 or 6 things that are all rejected, you start thinking that you are not able to do, and so on. So go smoothly, at least at the beginning. Don't approach immediately the 5 best journal in the world because the probability you are out are very high, and you may be frustrated and so on. You need to build confidence, okay, in yourself, basically. So get any journal. Try to find a journal which is more relevant for the work you're doing, no matter whether it's high level or not. Okay. And try to start the process and try to start collecting experience on some of these things. And then you can approach the others. Also because the so-called high-level journals sometimes maybe not in the area or in the topics you are interested in or you're working in. So yeah, I know this is a high-level job, but if I'm doing work in a totally different area, doesn't match. So try to, at least at the beginning, to get some experience, to be published and
Yes.
so on.
Yes.
Because otherwise, I tell you, it's frustrating, and you may abandon, not because you are
Very
bad,
much.
but because, you know, it's you don't start.
Yes.
Uh, I don't. If you learn to ski, you don't start with the track for the Olympic Games. You start with the soft track, and something like that. So get some experience. Otherwise, you may break your bones. you know.
Yeah. Yes, Prof. I'm really enjoying the way you are
And
giving the
if you start driving, you don't jump up on a Formula One car because you can't drive it. You start with the standard car. Then, when you gain confidence, you start with the Formula One.
Really, Prof, you are giving a wonderful analogies and examples. I'm loving it. Really, so great speaker you are. The way you are giving the different analogies is great. Prof, one another very interesting question, and they want to ask that, Prof, do you recommend the conference paper, and do you think conference is worthy enough? Please share your recommendation.
Conferences are wonderful places to know people, to discuss things, and so on. For our conferences, typically not during the sessions, but during the coffee breaks. My ideal conference will be one of 15-minute sessions and 2 hours coffee breaks, because there is where you know people, you discuss what you've done, and so on. Conferences mainly
Yes.
for young people, for young researchers, can be very important. Can be very important. Unfortunately, all universities will send you at a conference only if you present a paper, because that's the rule now, which is wrong in my opinion, because going
Yes.
there, sitting down and looking at the others is probably one of the most important things you can do, because you see other ways of approaching the thing you have done, or you are doing, or you're studying. You can discuss, you can, during a coffee, you can approach people in a very informal way and ask for discuss, chat, ask for suggestions. Probably, yeah, I think conferences are important. Unfortunately, they are expensive. They are and so on. But it's an important thing. Presenting at the conference can be also a good way of starting to see how to communicate well what you've done.
Yes.
So a presentation, a conference, because it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes there are have very hot discussions, during a presentation. So I've done some. uh, so it's important, because if they all say, well, okay, nice paper, but it's not relevant, then you don't go very far. I mean, or some may see different ways of doing things. You may become more creative, because looking at different ways, at different words, at different approaches, at different people, uh, can help you
Yes.
in finding different ways of doing things. So I think conferences are an important thing. Unfortunately, they're
Yes.
expensive. There are many, possibly, and maybe sometimes having a paper accepted at a conference is not that easy. But I would try anyway, or possibly I would try to go even without the paper
Yes. Very
accepted,
true.
but that's to have a look and to see what's happening.
Yes, Prof. Very nicely you have mentioned the two important pointer. First, we make the network and we come across the wonderful people at conferences, and secondly, we get the different on the topic, on the work we do, and we get the different perspective on it.
Yeah.
Really, Prof, I'm enjoying the question answer session, but since we have the time restriction and I know you are very engaged, and really, one last question, Prof, they
Yeah.
want to ask the people from around the globe that, Prof, please share your secret. What keeps you motivated and so much engaged and dedicated towards the field and
Um,
contribution to the world?
I, I,
Yes,
have, I have two things I always say my students are important characteristics, in my opinion. One is I am pathologically curious. So, I, I, I always try to look, and this is always is probably a personal feature or whatever, but curiosity is fundamental. And the second thing, I'm lazy. And if you are lazy, you always find the best and most effective way of doing things instead of wasting. So, but the curiosity is fundamental. Curiosity is
wow.
fundamental because if you're not curious, I typically say my student, you don't go very far in this world. And today
Yes.
we have an incredible wealth of tools. I mean, think of what is. I probably would have done less than half of what I've done without tools like Google Scholar or something like that. Because I mean, they give you a perspective that if you learn to use well these tools, they can give
Yes.
you a lot. I remember when I did my first thesis, there weren't these tools. So you would have been for hours in a library looking at those lousy little cards written by hand, trying to understand what they were saying. And you would have seen my main tool was a big book called Astronomical and Astrophysical Abstracts, and they were publishing all the abstracts of the past 6 months, and you had to go through that one. You know, no search functions, no. Yeah, yeah. You read, and you a pain, and obviously you miss a lot. Today, if you are interested in a topic, in a couple of hours, you can find an incredible wealth of documents, materials, and so on. So you can have, and if you are curious enough, I mean, you can do whatever you want. So be curious. That's the main thing.
Wonderful, Prof. Wonderful. Prof, you have shared a so wonderful, great wisdom with us, with our audience from around the globe. And so much, even I learned so many new things from you in this short period of time, Prof. You are really a great speaker and a wonderful expert.
Thank you.
So much for that. And Prof, at the end of the session, we ask each of our guests regarding their message to the world. So, Prof, what is your message to the world as a
My message. My message is we're living in a difficult world, but be, as I am, incurable optimist because we can make it. I mean, it's tough and tougher and tougher, but we will come out of these stupid and tricky situations. I hope, at least, as we've come out from the bad part of the pandemic, as we come out, we hope to. It will need more, how to say, trying to better understand the others, which is not something that many are very well versed into. But trying to understand the others and to collaborate a bit more can be an incredible way of looking for a better world, and we need a lot.
yes, Prof. Yeah, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed and thank you for giving us your precious time, Prof. To the audience, please do follow our distinguished guest speaker through his research work, and you can email him for future learning and guidance. He is very generous and always ready to help the people. So that's all we have time for today. Thank you once again, Prof. And I would
Thank
like to
you for having me,
thank you so much, Prof. And
and
the
good luck
audience.
to everyone.
Yes, Prof. Thank you. And thank you, our audience who joined us. If you have any additional questions about information shared today, please email us or connect to the speaker directly. Thank you all for your support and liking our sessions. Stay tuned as many sessions are on the way. Please do not miss any session. And till next session, take care of yourself. Bye bye.